This is a follow-up from last week. If you weren't here, I'll just talk about it just a little bit, but I won't go on. I was talking about a very long word. I don't know if anybody can remember what it was. Can you remember, Sam? Counterintuitive. Yeah, counterintuitive behavior. The kingdom of God is about counterintuitive behavior, which means not necessarily doing what your instinct and your natural self would present to you. Jesus, particularly in the Gospel of Matthew here, talked a lot about things like loving your enemies. And I talked about if you love a stranger, or you love your enemy, or you do something for a neighbour, none of these people owe you anything. So to actually do anything for them, you're not going to get anything back from the transaction. And that's what God's love is like. It's given freely without any expectation of return. And that is the love of God, whereas the love that we usually have in the world is transactional. You do something for me, and I do something for you. So to be counterintuitive, you do it anyway. If someone does you a bad turn, you care for them anyway. If it's a stranger, you've nothing to gain from helping them, you do it anyway. If it's somebody who wants something that you have, but they've no right to it, Jesus was saying, well, think about it. If you're acting counterintuitively, you don't just give it, you give it willingly. And all of Matthew 5, which was my, let's say, if you want to call it conversion to being a follower of Jesus, was through Matthew 5. It was reading about all that stuff. And what he said was, if you just love the people who love you, or you're just for your friends and your family, and you're interested in your own interests, how are you different from anybody else? That's how it finishes. So that's what I was talking about last week. And I gave the example of the balloon. I don't know if you remember the example of the balloon, where the teacher writes everybody's name on a balloon and throws the balloon, all the balloons into the corridor and says to the children, find your own balloon. And so they can't find their own balloon because the balloons don't have a will of their own, and they don't do as they're told. And the teacher said, hang on a minute. Pick up the nearest balloon and give it to the person nearby. And therefore, everybody will get their own balloon. So, in actual fact, it's counterintuitive to go and look for someone else's balloon because you've been told to go and look for your own balloon. So normally our ego, they call it these days, our self-interest means that we pursue the things that we need, the things that are important to us. But what Jesus is saying, that the kingdom of God is exactly the opposite. You pursue other people's things, not your own things. You honour and you have humility and you put the interests of someone else before your own. And that is the gospel that has, in my view, got forgotten. It's got forgotten. So I wanted to go on with it today and add to it a little bit. And I would like you to think about the next thing I am going to read. And I would like you to think whether or not you've ever done any of these things. Jesus saw the vast crowds and he went up into the hillside. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Now, the vast crowds are not interested in this stuff. His disciples are interested in this sort of thing. His disciples are the people who he's talking to, not the vast crowds. His disciples came to him. Everybody was massed around, but his disciples, his followers, the people who really wanted to hear him came. And he said, he began his teaching with them. He said, how happy are the humble-minded, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. How happy, we know that a lot of versions say blessed, are those who know what sorrow means, for they will be given courage and comfort. How happy are those who claim nothing, for the whole of the earth will belong to them. How happy are those who hunger and thirst for goodness, for they will be fully satisfied. Happy are the merciful, for they will have mercy shown to them. Happy are the utterly sincere, for they will see God. Happy are those who make peace, for they will be known as sons of God. Happy are those who have suffered persecution for the cause of goodness, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And what happiness will be yours when people blame you and they'll treat you and say all kinds of slanderous things against you for my sake. Be glad, yes, be tremendously glad, for your reward in heaven is magnificent. They persecuted the prophets before your time in exactly the same way. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. Can you think back in your life? Have you ever been a peacemaker? You've been in a situation where you know it's all kicking off. And it would be very easy for you to kick off. Have you been there? And you have brought peace to the situation and kept calm. Excellent. Yeah, have a think about that, because be glad, because what you're doing is you're reflecting who God is. Now, you are made in his image, and he came to this earth to remind us who we really are and to bring us back into that fold. Have you ever been in a situation where people's attitudes are going wrong? Or you're tempted for your attitude to go wrong, to have a poor attitude, to have a selfish attitude. But you've decided you weren't going to take that road. I'm not going to be selfish. I'm not going to be self-centered. I'm going to be, there's a long word here, altruistic. I'm going to do good, whatever. Even though I'm very tempted to go, no, what about me? What about me? Happy are the utterly sincere. Blessed are those with a pure heart, for they will see God. And I reminded everyone yesterday, that means you look in a mirror, and if you've got no selfishness or selfish motive, you see in the reflection of the mirror of your heart exactly who God is, because he is unselfish. His love is unconditional. How counterintuitive is this, being happy when you're persecuted and people are slandering you? There's nothing worse. I don't know if you've ever been in this situation where people are saying bad things about you and you can't defend yourself. They're bad-mouthing you. They're bad-mouthing you, and you cannot get to that person and go, no, I am not like that. I'm not like that. You may have been in that situation. You may have been. And what he's saying is counterintuitive. Be glad. Be glad? What do you mean be glad? That doesn't make any sense. In this world's version of things, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And it's not an easy thing to do, to be glad. But if they might know you're a Christian, they might actually say things that are not very nice about you. So today I'm going to talk about being counterintuitive again, but being counterintuitive in the middle of our troubles. In the middle of our troubles, we tend to focus on our great desire personally for change and for rescue. And there is a great play in churches. Everybody pray for things to get better. And you individually, not you, but a person individually, me, you, everybody, we are going, get me out of this problem. Meet my need. Make my life better for me and mine. By better, we mean get rid of our problems, our hassles, perhaps make us more prosperous, improve our lifestyle or relationships. And what we're saying to God basically is, give us stuff and cheer us up, please. Give us stuff and cheer us up, please. Please. I did say please, you know. I'm being very respectful to you, God. You want us to be happy, don't you? I will tell you, God, what will make me happy, what will make me blessed, and I want you to do it. And nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. We have needs and we take them to God, and we should take them to God. We should take them to God. But in the bigger picture, he knows what we need. Back to Matthew, he knows what we need. He knows what we need. But he also knows that the source of our happiness depends on our learning to think and act as who we really are in God. To discover our real selves. The Beatitudes, the blessed, 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 happy, 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 are all pathways to getting the things that you want. And I think that gets lost. It's counterintuitive. Yes, we always pray to God, because in 1 James it says, if you've got any problem or you want wisdom, pray to God. Ask God. With a full heart, do that. But Jesus' teaching was a bit broader than just getting what you want, putting the prayer in, and then getting it. The Beatitudes are paths. These are called the Beatitudes. These blessed are. They are paths that lead somewhere. They lead to happiness. But they're counterintuitive. If you really want goodness, if you really want to know God, if you're really hungry and thirsty, you'll be filled. It's actually setting out what God's priorities are. Our transformation is his priority, and he will provide what we want. Didn't he say, you know, what about the lilies of the fields? They don't have to make an effort, but they get what they want and what they need. But this counterintuitive cause and effect is something that is the kingdom of God, and something that is not necessarily taken on board by Christians. Sometimes it's because they've read quite a lot about the Deuteronomy and the Old Testament, saying if you're a good person you get stuff, and you're a bad person you don't get stuff. But Jesus doesn't go down that road. That's right, yeah, that's right. Our action in being counterintuitive will, change our environment. It's a bit like when we start behaving in a kind of a kingdom way, when we start putting ourselves second and the kingdom of God first, and the priorities of the kingdom of God first, then we start to transform ourselves. I believe that as a direct result. The more you do that, not in a, oh dear, I'm not worth anything, I'm a terrible person so I don't deserve anything, not in that way, but in a, my lifestyle depends on developing myself as a person, as a mature person, and my character is developed by doing what Jesus said, by being counterintuitive. When I meet an enemy, a neighbour, a stranger, I don't say, stand aside enemy, stand aside neighbour, stand aside you people, because I come before all of you, and so do mine, and so do my family. We treat people, we love people as much as we love ourselves, because that's the second commandment, isn't it? So as we do that, we transform ourselves. We're going up some steps. Every time we come across that kind of a challenge, we are transformed. But we not only transform ourselves, we transform the world around us. As soon as you say to somebody who is not your friend, who is a stranger, who is a neighbour, as soon as you put their needs before your needs, that's when you start to change the world. That's how people go, they're different. How come? People don't normally do that. They're behaving differently. It draws attention. In Matthew 13:14, exactly after the Beatitudes comes, you are the earth's salt. It's very easy to read these bits as if they don't relate to each other, isn't it? Let's go on to another verse, and then another verse. Well, it wasn't written in verses, was it? It was written in a narrative form. Jesus was talking to his disciples. He goes straight from the persecuted prophets, and then he goes on and says, you are the earth's salt. What he's saying is, develop a counterintuitive lifestyle where you are behaving in a not egoistic, not to do with your self-interest, but blessing others as much as you bless yourself. It's the same. Treating other people as if they are your family, as if you do care. Just not neglecting yourself. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, forget yourself. No. Love each other as you love yourself. So he's saying you are the earth's salt. And salt makes things tasty. When we're in the cafe, people go, where's the salt? Where's the salt? Can you pass me the salt? It's a bit bland, this. We're making the world feel different.
Yeah, as well. I'm thinking you can look at that. Other different seasoning spices.
Yeah.
So, we don't all put a bit of salt.
No. That's really excellent. Lillian's just added, I need to say that so everyone can hear it, that it's not just salt, we all put our own sort of seasoning in, which is a lovely thought because we are our own unique individual. So Wayne might put a bit of pepper in, Val might put a bit of rosemary in, or whatever it might be. We all put our own seasoning in. But when people experience our counterintuitive lifestyle, they are surprised because it's not what the world is like, but it makes them feel good and it tastes right for them. And it tastes right because it's been improved, much improved. And then he says, you are the light of the world. Quite often people think Jesus said, I am the light of the world. No, he didn't say that in Matthew anyway, let's put it that way. You are the world's light. And the reason you're the world's light is because you're behaving differently to what other people do. And you are showing what light looks like, what goodness looks like, what God's way looks like. Because what Jesus is saying, if you want what you want, and you want things that are the desires of your heart, you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And the word righteousness is a bit of a misleading word. It means the way God does things. Do things the way God does things. Don't think, God, I am going to send off to Amazon, God, and get a parcel delivered from God, and the postman's that's not, God is not Amazon. He's not the post. He's not the catalogue where we send off for things from. We are interactive with him, and he is as close as he can be. And he's saying, men don't light a lamp and put it under a bucket. It's easy to go, oh yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I follow Jesus. But actually, if you're under the bucket, then you're not behaving counterintuitively. You are still in the zone of putting your own interests before other people's, and certainly putting your own interests before other people when you get an opportunity to bless somebody who is a stranger or a different person or person that doesn't belong to your family, tribe, group. As I said, the Good Samaritan, he knew immediately when he saw that guy on the floor, hello, we've got somebody who doesn't like me here. Now, all the other people that belonged to his tribe walked on with a lot of good excuses. Or they were afraid. Now, fear is one of the things that stops us behaving counterintuitively. Fear, I've got to save my life, so I better move on because those robbers might come back. Possibly that man didn't even know who it was. He didn't even know, probably. He was unconscious. But he took him to a place and he paid for him. And he gave the innkeeper the money and said, if that runs out, let me know. Look after him, make sure he gets better. This was not just a stranger. It was a stranger who was an enemy. He would have been able to tell by the way he was dressed that this person possibly had opinions that were racist towards him. Very, very strange behaviour for a Samaritan. Samaritans had big arguments with Jews, huge arguments, massive arguments. They would never agree. But he didn't think that, he thought, this is a person who is on the floor. I don't mind, if the robbers come back, I'll sort it. But I'm going to get him on this horse. I'm going to take him, I'm going to help him. So, being counterintuitive, it doesn't come naturally. The other three people that walked past, who we waved goodbye to, had very valid reasons. I know we looked down on them, but, and they were high up in the church. They were very religious people. They were high up in the church, but sadly, they had too much fear, or they were too busy, or they were too focused on their own interests. Sam? Sorry, I can't hear, a bit deaf. Can you ask me afterwards? Ask me afterwards, because I'm a little bit, not at this distance. Okay. So one of the things that I suggest you do is think about those times where you've been in a situation and you've acted counterintuitively. Now, people will tell you, right, if you're going to be a Christian, you must read the Bible every day, morning, noon and night, and pray a lot and do all the... Nothing wrong with those things. Not necessarily what Jesus taught his disciples to do, I hasten to add. And, I'm all for it, that if people want to do it. It's a blessing. If it blesses them, go do it. But what Jesus was saying is, seek first a counterintuitive lifestyle. Create a fresh mental attitude. I was talking about Caroline Leaf, Dr. Caroline Leaf, who says, if you start changing your habits, your thinking habits, your physical, it actually changes the pathways in your brain. They've done work on this, and it does. Seek first. You see, Jesus wouldn't say do it if he didn't know it could be done. Say, well, I can't do that. I'm too busy to, worried to this, that, the other. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all your wants and needs are met. You see, children whose wants are not met, and that, can I go to the fair? 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 Get really frustrated, don't they? And some people who are Christians and not Christians live a very frustrated life. They become fearful, they become resentful, they become jealous because somebody else is going to the fair and I'm not going to the fair. They become angry. Why am I not going to the fair? They become sad. Nobody loves me, they're not taking me to the fair. But it is also the same for adults. Do you remember the oven chips advert? I don't know if anybody does. Feed me now. Do you remember that? Does anybody else remember that? Yeah. It was a little boy with a very deep voice. I think it was McCain chips. And this child was going, feed me now. And what he was saying was, my needs now. But What Jesus is saying is, I know what your needs are. I know what your wants are. But in order to be able to fulfill those in the best way possible, you're not a child anymore. If you want to grow up into an adult, I don't remember if you remember 1 Corinthians 13 verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, but then I grew up and I moved on. It's not all exactly about me. And there's nothing wrong with loving yourself. There's nothing wrong with looking to meet your own needs, for men to take care of their own families, to loving their own wives and their children. And there's nothing wrong with that. But added to that is that extra thing that is to do with the kingdom of God, which is seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, the way he does things. Because if you want to be mature and to grow up, that's the pathway to go. The pathway to go is Jesus' words. I read out Romans 5, which I'll do that in a minute, but I'm going to read out Matthew 16:25, which is from the Message. I've pinched it from the Message Bible. I like trying different ones, it's interesting. And this is Matthew 16 verse 25. Anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. Do it his way. You are not in the driver's seat. I am. And this is quite a difficult one. I'm just trying to get my head around this. I want to say, don't run from suffering, embrace it. Follow me and I will show you how. Self-help, by which it means self-interested help, just helping yourself and nobody else, selfishly, is no help at all. You put your ego second. You sacrifice your ego, just like Jesus was sacrificed. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to finding your true self. It's going back to what kind of a deal if you gain everything you want but lose your real self. If you're talking about the old versions, it said if you lose your life, you gain it. What kind of a deal it is if you gain everything but lose yourself? And your real self is exactly like God. You are gracious, you are long-suffering, you are patient, you are kind. This doesn't mean to say you have poor self-esteem and think, I'm just terrible and everybody else is wonderful, everybody else has a wonderful life and I'm so terrible. That's not what Jesus is saying. He's saying, love others just like you would care for and maintain yourself and your own family. Include them in to your life, because that's exactly what God does. In Ephesians 4:15, we are to grow up in every way into Christ. We can be full of joy here and now, even in our trials and troubles, taken in the right spirit. These very things will give us patient endurance. If you want patient endurance, you have to have something to patiently endure, don't you? This in turn will develop a mature character, and a character of this sort produces a steady hope, a hope that will never disappoint us. That whoever trusts in the Lord will never be disappointed. Your needs will be met. He does know what you need and what you want. And go to him with all your needs and problems and things like that. That's a good thing to do. But remember, the way that you are most successfully reflecting God is always to love other people as much as you care for yourself. And sometimes to put your interests below the interests of others. And of course, for that, you need insight and wisdom. in Matthew 10, Jesus said to his disciples, I send you as sheep in the middle of wolves. He's saying, you're terribly innocent. He said, but I'm sending you in the middle of wolves. And being in this world, it's a wolf pack sometimes. There's a lot of problems that we come across, a lot of unpleasantness, a lot of evil, difficulties that muck up our lives. It's a challenge being here. It gets to us. But what he advises is, he says, you have to be as wise as a serpent and as harmless as a dove. And that, I looked up that word. Internet's wonderful, isn't it? Pronemos. It means practical wisdom, thinking carefully about the outcome of your actions. That's the wisdom it's talking about. Before you do them, and choosing that which will benefit you or benefit the situation later. It's having a considered point of view. Decisions today will help your interests later. And one of those decisions is sometimes counterintuitively to put somebody's interests before yourself. Because a bit later on he tells a story about a man who is about to get the sack because he's been found out stealing money from his master. I love this story. I think it's so funny. And it's a parable. And what he's saying is, in this parable, he's saying, this man called all the master's debtors to him and said, here you are, here you go. I'm going to cross out what it says on your contract, and you only have to pay my master 50 quid instead of 500 quid. And he altered everybody's contract because he wanted to make friends after he got the sack from his master. And what Jesus was saying is, the people in this world have more common sense than the people in the kingdom of God sometimes. They don't think about what is wisdom, what is going to make sense to people, to be on their level. And it's a very interesting sort of parable, because he's saying, well, this man saw that it was in his own interest to reduce everybody else's debt because he was caught in a bad way. And so why do we look at people and go, well, they're not very good, they're not very good, they're not very good, never. Why don't you just forgive them their debts? Forgive them their debts. Because you're making a friend in the kingdom of heaven. You're moving a debt out of the way. What you're doing is you're accepting them, whatever their faults are, whatever their wrongdoings are, whatever they owe you, and whatever they owe other people. You're saying, I'm going to move all that aside, and I'm going to say, well, I'm not much good either. I make mistakes. They've made mistakes. I'm going to move all that aside, and I'm going to go, we're all the same, really. If I can help you, I will. If I can bless you, I will. Nobody, like Lillian was saying, nobody is excluded. Nobody is excluded. Everybody is accepted. When in the parable of the wedding, all the posh people wouldn't come. So the king said, okay, send out for anybody who wants to come, the highways and the byways. Just find people in ditches. Anybody can come. Because they're the people who end up in the kingdom of heaven. They're the people who will come to the feast of the master. So we have to look at people differently to what we normally look at people. We don't look with the eyes of the world. We look with the eyes of Jesus, look at people. So thank you.